Good afternoon. The Volunteer Stewardship Network has been supporting volunteer groups for over 25 years. It's my pleasure to share with you today a little bit of history and some stories about the people and the faces that make up this incredible, unique network. The VSN is people who have found a personal connection to nature through stewardship. In many cases, these volunteers are responsible for saving our remaining prairies and wetlands, savannas, and forests. In the early years, the Nature Conservancy and the Illinois Nature Preserves Commission worked at a grassroots level. We built community, we found and empowered good people, and we worked shoulder to shoulder with them. This cross-section of a tree that's coming up here represents 50 years. Oh, maybe I'll take a few more minutes. There we go. It has some of the history of the network. As you see in the middle is when it was born in 1983. It then expanded to Central Illinois in '89. In 2008, it expanded to Southern Illinois. Today, there are 54 groups active in the network, and these groups represent a multitude of different land trusts, public agencies, small grassroots organizations, even private individuals who may own a nature preserve. But you can't talk about the VSN without really going back to its roots. In 1975, the North Branch Restoration Project was born, also known as the North Branch Prairie Project, formally. This was a small group of people who wanted to preserve some rare plants along the North Branch River. And this is where the concept of volunteer steward, co-stewards, and other volunteer roles were defined and tested. Unique to North Branch is a wild garden program where seeds from 200 species, many of them are very rare, are collected by volunteers and sent to the Chicago Botanic Garden where they're raised as seedlings. These seedlings are sent back to the volunteers to tend in their yards, and then they return the seeds to North Branch sites. Today, several groups across the network engage in this tradition of collecting and sowing native seeds. Many of them have seed processing parties and exchanges. Volunteers also help to put fire back on the land, probably one of our most important tools. In the early years, the VSN hosted a multitude of training workshops. But I will have to say, despite these formal trainings, much of that training actually goes on in a very informal basis. Peer teaching that's typically learned in the field at work days. In 1993, the Conservancy saw this model and how it was working very well for the network and decided to expand it in the youth realm. And in a partnership with the Forest Preserve District of Cook County, they joined forces and created Mighty Acorns, a program to connect urban youth, 4th and 6th graders. The network also played a role both directly and indirectly supporting volunteer monitoring across the state. By supporting volunteers and ensuring that our natural areas are healthy and viable, we support these species. Lots of monitoring is happening: butterflies, dragonflies, toads and frogs, birds, and rare plants. Located in Elgin, Illinois, Bluff Spring Fen, probably some of you are aware of that place, very special. It's a 100-acre preserve. It's one of the greatest success stories. Once a playground for off-road vehicles and much abuse, the volunteers sought protection for this place in 1980, and with the help of 400 volunteers, they were instrumental in relocating Healy Road Prairie, a small high-quality prairie that was slated for destruction, to the fen. Then we go downstate to Shoal Creek. Shoal Creek is a natural area that's owned by the city of Litchfield, and it is diversity-rich, home to 700 plant species, 75 breeding birds, and 71 species of butterflies. Since 1991, Henry Eilers, president and founder of Shoal Creek, has helped protect this place, and he's made it part of the Litchfield community. So how does the VSN support all these different groups? Well, one of the big things that we do is we have a small grants program that we buy the things that are difficult for groups to get: tools, herbicide, money for their newsletters. We helped fund the BioBlitz along the Mississippi River this past year. So we're filling a niche where maybe other funding cannot be found. We're helping to build capacity of these groups. The lifeblood of any network, as we've heard earlier, is really connection and keeping people informed. I have a monthly newsletter that I put out every month that gives a listing of all the different workshops and trainings and resources to keep everyone connected and also informed of what's going on. There's also a Stewards listserv where they can also talk with each other and exchange ideas. I also host in-person meetings once a year. We meet and talk about our needs and opportunities, and then we also arrange a conference every couple years. We partner with Chicago Audubon, and we put on a conference called Wild Things. So equally important is invasive species. It's one of our biggest threats. We were learning through the years that there were not a lot of tools on the grounds for volunteers to identify these new species. So in 2005, the Nature Conservancy got money from BP and worked with several partners, and we developed this new Invaders Watch program, which put the tools in the hands of volunteers to start looking for these species. Related to that, 3 years ago, I was contacted by a volunteer, Ross Peterson. He was a steward of Jackson Park, and he connected me with Barbara Flynn Curry, a representative in the Chicago region who's been very supportive with us, and the Illinois Department of Agriculture, and we were able to enact new herbicide rules this year to allow public agencies to train their volunteers locally. In addition to that, I would have to say that sometimes those working against us only make us stronger. This summer, a small group of individuals in northern Illinois tried to shut down restoration using a narrow interpretation of the Garlon 4 label. A volunteer by the name of Pete Leckie and several other volunteers and lots of phone calls and emails and lots of help from partners helped turn that around. And then there's Kathy Garnis. She not only protects and monitors orchids since 2001 through Plants of Concern, but she restores their habitat as a steward, and she paints them. She's an invaluable resource, and she's our connection to the artisan community. So I guess in summary, people are just overwhelmed with the world's environmental problems. I mean, we're bombarded. And I think the opportunities within the network, they provide a solution that is tangible. It's allowing people to make a difference in their own community. And just as in nature, all these groups in the network are unique and diverse, and that's just a few of them. And I think that's what is their strength, is that they are unique. Our future is in the hands of our children, and getting people connected to nature is essential, as you all know. Just this summer, the Conservancy hired an outside consultant, and we asked lots of volunteers, what was the number one reason how they got started as a volunteer? And their number one reason was because they visited a preserve. And so I think this really makes the statement very clear that, getting people out and connected to these places is important, and that's what the network's all about. Thank you.